Through their lobbying, through their
Because
campaign support.
It seems to me that the only time, now correct me, that we gain any ground on billboards seems most of the time in the courts. Is that, or, although maybe you could argue, well, it started with a piece of legislation that was challenged and that's what provoked going to court, but it seems to me like so many things, whether it's updating community plans here in LA or density things, the city will go one way and there's no relief until somebody can somehow scrape together the money and the will to file suit.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And this is just another area where that's
It's playing out.
that holds true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's not the way it should be.
You know, lately in LA, it seems like everything's being done by lawsuit.
Yeah, governing by lawsuit.
Governing by lawsuit.
Legislating by lawsuit.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
and it's a difficult, challenging way for community groups, organizations like yours, and the Miracle Mile Residential Association, to have to do that, particularly in the deep pockets versus shallow pockets.
I mean, we went to, just to give you an example, when the digital billboards first started going up, there were 3 in the Westwood area, and we joined with two homeowners associations and a civic organization that works in that community, and we filed challenges with the building department to the permits issued for those conversions on the grounds that they were in all in zoning overlays. One was a pedestrian-oriented district, one was a designated scenic corridor, which has no billboards, a pedestrian-oriented district, which has no flashing, no electronic signs and flashing lights. So we said our challenge was that these violate zoning. I mean, it's obvious.
Yeah, it's plain,
It's plain. It's just what they do. The zoning administrator agreed with us, and the West LA Area Planning Commission agreed with us, and that was the end of the line. That was not appealable at that point. So, of course, these belong to Clear Channel and CBS. Of course, they immediately sued, and we were named in the lawsuit. The associations and our coalition, and so here we were forced to, spend money. We were forced to hire a lawyer, and to take money that could be really well spent, I believe, in doing education. Just, going around developing materials, explaining to people about billboards, maybe even building up our own legal fund to take some action. Instead, we're forced to defend ourselves against these these big deep-pocketed companies, and we were just it just feels like something is completely out of whack when
it is.
That is how things have to work. The city should have stepped in and said, the building department said, hey, this is in a district that doesn't allow billboards. This is in a scenic corridor, so you cannot have that permit. Sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, they still could have sued, but
that's been what's been happening with these.
They didn't do that. We had to take our. It was a long and kind of arduous process. We had to take it in hand, and
the courts seem to be continually finding the city breaking or ignoring its own rules that it wrote.
Yes.
And particularly in land use and land planning, zoning, we've had 4 or 5 notable victories in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
Millennium Project, Hollywood Community Plan update, and the Target store, and the Sunset Gordon CIM project, where they were even forced to retract the certificate of occupancy and move those tenants out.
Right.
And that's, people say, oh, well, NIMBYs. But again, these are cases where they were caught breaking the rules they wrote.
Yes, I hear that, we get accused of that too, that we're, the billboard, anti-billboard activists are just a part of that NIMBY crowd,
Well, if a digital billboard is across the street, I guess it is your backyard.
We don't want a digital billboard in our backyard.
Yeah.
But what is wrong with this picture? That people volunteer, people that care about their communities, go to meetings and give their input about establishing, say, a pedestrian-oriented district in their community, and they give their time and their effort, and with no monetary return.
And these aren't easy things to accomplish. They take so much time and energy.
They're not, and the city should absolutely do everything they can to encourage that kind of citizen involvement. And then here comes along a billboard company and says, we're gonna put a billboard right in the middle of that, a big digital billboard. It's whack right there. And they go to the city, and the city says, okay, fine. It's, there's a huge disconnect there in some way.
It is. Now, let's get up to current events here. I'm trying to understand what is going on right now with this suggestion about bringing back more digital, or allowing more digital billboards, somehow connected to some cockamamie reduction thing or amnesty. I can't. What is going on? Make sense out of this for me.
Okay, well, I'll try.
Yeah, good luck. You've got plenty of time.
I can't promise, but this goes back to 2002 when the city passed the off-site sign ban, no new billboards. At the same time, there was a lot of discussion around that time about the fact that nobody knew how many billboards there were in the city. Nobody knew how.
That's always killed me. We don't even know.
Nobody knew whether
how many have permits.
Yeah, right. So they were going to go and do this biannual inspection program. That became part of the lawsuit, the fee to be charged for that program. But anyway, that inspection program, that was 2002, that finally, the first round of that was finally done. The results were that's another case. We had to sue to get the results.
They wouldn't, I know, I remember
They didn't want to release them, which for reasons I'm still not totally clear on. But in any case, we got our hands on that. The results became public in 2011. And we spent a lot of time combing the database. And determined that there were 9,000 billboard structures that, there were about 6,000 billboard structures and 9,000 billboard faces, because a lot of them have double faces. And out of those 9,000, 4,000 did not comply, around 4,000, did not comply in some manner with the terms of their permit, or did not have a permit at all. So then, so we started lobbying and for the city to start enforcing against those. With a very little, it was hard to get anybody moving. Then there was a second, the 2-year cycle. There was a second inspection done, and that was released late in 2013. And according to that, there were, and they didn't That one, the database didn't include any of the details that the first database had included. And they classified 900 and some as either being unpermitted or being out of compliance. Not 4,000.
No, 4,000.
900
Somehow
and some.
that, yeah.
Somehow the number really shrank. So, and there was, so that is the number that's being thrown around now. So, I hate to complicate this story even more, but at the
It's
same,
a complicated story.
at the same
That's why
time,
we're doing this.
at the same time all this was happening, in the city started to rewrite the whole sign ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the purposes was to make it more immune to lawsuits. And the City Planning Commission passed a revised ordinance in 2009. And that would have restricted any new billboards, including digital billboards, to sign districts. And those sign districts in turn were restricted to 22 areas that are deemed or zoned as regional center or regional commercial. One of them has to be the Miracle Mile.
Mm-hmm. If we're zoned as a regional center.
Yeah, so it's eligible
Mm-hmm.
for those sign districts, as we've seen with the. But that went to the City Council Plum Committee. It's been there ever since. And
When did it go to the Plum Committee?
and I think the first meeting of the Plum Committee on the sign ordinance was May of 2009. So it's been 6 years in the Plum Committee.
Right.
Through different members, different,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there have been amendments, and there have been, anyway, to make a long story short, late last year, it hadn't, we were actually trying to find out when it was gonna, you know, when is it gonna come up?
Yeah.
And the planning department didn't even know, or they purported not to know. And suddenly it was just on the agenda. You know, we knew 72 hours in advance.
Mm-hmm.
We just saw it on the agenda. So obviously we got busy. We went to the meeting, and Mitch Englander, who was not an original member of the Plum Committee, just out of the blue, without any preamble, proposed that all those billboards that are classified as unpermitted or non-compliant be granted amnesty.
Mm.
And his explanation was that if we don't, we'll just invite a lot of litigation.
Okay.
At the same time, the billboard companies have been lobbying very hard to, you know, on behalf of digital billboards, to either get these digital billboards some way turned back on,
Mm-hmm.
to get more digital billboards. Lamar Advertising then went to the building department. This was all before that meeting. Went to the building department, applied for permits for 45 brand new digital billboards, were turned down, and then they sued the city. So all this is going on.
Yeah.
And so the Plum Committee directed the planning department to come back with a report on these things. So on June 30th of this year, it came back, and basically the report was to grant those billboards amnesty as proposed, and to develop a process whereby new digital billboards could be put up by the billboard companies getting a conditional use permit.
That's the one that struck me. Much like you have to do when you for liquor to sue.
Yeah, a conditional use permit.
Uh-huh.
So, which is just basically a permit with conditions.
Which means that only the
Yeah,
people who live within, what, 500
500 feet
feet
would get
would have any awareness that it was even happening.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
They would get notification. And part of this would be a requirement that in order to get one of these conditional use permits, which could be for any commercial street
Mm-hmm.
in the city, they would have to take down a certain number of billboards,
Of the old conventional.
the old conventional billboards.
Which make
Yeah.
what? Something like
Yeah.
a factor of 8 times less than
Yeah.
the digital ones.
Yeah,
Big sacrifice, I would say.
yeah.
Basically, you could take down 8 billboards.
So this whole conditional
break even.
use permit process had never been publicly discussed.
Mhm.
Nobody had been asked to give input on it. It came. So I mean, obviously, this amnesty, to me, it's obvious that the amnesty and the conditional use process are what the billboard companies have decided to pursue, that they want.
Yeah,
And they probably wrote the language for that. And just
I wouldn't be surprised.
so, those are the two things. Those are the two big things right now.
Mhm.
And because those weren't part of the original sign ordinance,
Mhm.
they're going to have to go back to the city planning commission. So, on June 30th, at the June 30th meeting, the Plum Committee directed that go back to, that go to the planning committee, that the planning department have all that ready with all
Mhm.
with a lot of details that are missing now
Mhm.
in 60 days.
Okay, so that was the end of June.
That was the end of June. And,
So now, end of August, beginning of September.
yeah, and I don't know that that's going to happen that fast, but
Mhm.
so far, right now, 4 city councilmen have publicly opposed both of those things.
Mhm.
And you may have seen the article in the LA Times by David Zonheiser. Weezer was opposed to those before the
Yeah.
election,
I have it right.
but it is
Yeah.
not now. So
Yeah. What happened? What do you think?
I think he came to his senses, obviously.
It seems to me, given this history, that whatever happens, good, bad, or indifferent, on billboards, will always end up in court. That there will always be somebody's ox is gored in the billboard industry, whether it's a small player or a large player or true business rivals or community groups who are outraged. Is there, in an ideal world, what piece of legislation could this city come up with that would more or less make this problem go away? Or is that just impossible?
No, it's not impossible, because there are 4 states in the country, Alaska, Maine, Vermont, and Hawaii, that don't allow billboards, period, without exception.
I kind of like that. That's
And
all I can.
those laws have all been challenged
Yeah.
and upheld,
Mhm.
and there's no further challenge. And the courts, there are cities right here. I mean, anybody who drives around to kind of the peripheral cities like Santa Monica.
Well, let's just take that,
You
because
could-
people are familiar with Santa
Yeah.
Monica. What's, in a nutshell, what's the difference between LA and Santa Monica's approach in legislation on billboards?
Santa Monica doesn't allow billboards, period.
Okay.
There are a few in the city that still remain from way back.
Mhm. They were kind of grandfathered in.
Well, what happened was that Santa Monica and some other cities said to the billboard companies, okay, we're not going to allow any new billboards, and we're going to give you 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you have to take down all those billboards that you got up there now.
Mhm.
And this was happening around the city. I won't get into the details of why
Mhm.
in the late 60s, 70s, then billboards started proliferating. But the state passed a law saying you can't do that. You can no longer do that. You have to pay the billboard companies compensation.
Mhm.
That was called, there's a term for that, which is escaping me at the moment, but that's, so billboards would never disappear because
The government's too much to
you
pay.
have to compensate
Yeah.
them to get rid of them.
Yeah.
But Santa Monica said no more billboards without exception. So did Pasadena. So did Burbank. So did a lot of places. And those have not been successfully challenged in court. The trouble with LA is that where they get themselves in trouble, they say no new billboards except
Yeah.
for sign districts or except for here. Or, okay, we're not going to allow any billboards, but we're going to allow, Clear Channel, we're going to allow you to put a billboard by Staples Center or something like that. And
So it always leaves them open to
And
being
that's-
challenged
that's
for
the
being
heart
unfair.
that's the heart of those challenges, all these
Yeah.
legal challenges.
Yeah.
That's the heart of those. And I mentioned earlier that the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in favor of the city and said you can have your billboard ban and you can still have sign districts, but they made it very clear that you can't have too many exceptions. If you start they actually use the words in their ruling willy-nilly. You can't just willy-nilly give exceptions. That's why this whole conditional use process for new digital billboards
Always fraught with peril.
is a disaster. It's
Well, and
a
also
disaster because it's going to other companies that don't, those companies that put up the big super graphic signs, other companies that have that want to put up new billboards, they're going to sue the city and they're going to say, look, you allowed all this.
Well, and then what will happen is you'll have a council district where you have a council person who does have a backbone, and doesn't want digital billboards, next to a district with a council member who's more lenient or tolerant or making more exceptions. And you keep establishing these kind of wacky precedents that bite you in the butt when you go to court. Because a judge might not see the difference between one side of La Brea and one council district and the other side of La Brea and another. And so wondering why on this side
Right.
you can have it, but on
Right,
this side
exactly.
you can't.
Exactly.
Because with these 15 individual council districts that tend to be run as individual fiefdoms, particularly when it comes to conditional use permits,
Yes.
the council members have a great deal of influence
Yes.
on
Yes.
that.
And another thing, since we're talking about litigation, suppose the whoever's handing out the conditional use permit, the area planning commission or the zoning administrator or whatever, if they deny it, what's Clear Channel going to do?
Sue them.
They're going to sue them.
Yeah,
It's another lawsuit.
that's a no-brainer.
The
Maybe.
answer, Ken, absolutely is, and believe me, we've talked about this, is to do like San Francisco did, had a citywide ballot initiative to ban off-site signs, period, no exceptions.
Sounds good to me.
And
Hard
it
to
passed by almost 70%.
Well, see, those are my instincts. That's what I was asking earlier about who really likes billboards.
And that was immediately challenged.
So I think we can say in San
upheld.
Francisco, only 30% of the voters
Yeah.
were open to them, but the overwhelming majority had had it.
And we think it would pass. However, not to give any possible strategy away, but it would have to be done. If you're going to do a ballot initiative in a city this size, you have to have a lot of money. Not only just to gather the signatures, and then can you imagine what the billboard
Well,
companies,
a lopsided publicity fight.
every billboard you drove down the street would
and
say
they would-
no on Proposition
Well, because
7.
also now explain to me this connection about these politicians aren't being altruistic in their support of billboards. Obviously, some of them are seeing a way of creating funding for the city, whether it's through fees. I mean, is that what this is about? Are they thinking, well, if we if we license digital billboards and they charged an X amount of dollars, is that an angle they're playing?
That's one aspect that's getting discussed.
Mhm.
There are a couple of council members who are discussing that as who honestly see this conditional use process thing as a disaster. Anybody can see that, and are looking to try to monetize billboards, limit them to certain areas, maybe on public property, and get some revenue from them. That's been done in Chicago. It's been done in Miami.
Mhm.
So
Little profit centers
yeah,
generate revenue.
and we're opposed to that. I mean, we're opposed to allowing new billboards, period. But
Mhm.
if it came down to that, if there was a choice between that or just allowing them anywhere, then that would be a hard choice. That would be
Yeah, kind of a
So it should really-
Hobson's choice,
a
yeah.
Hobson's choice, exactly. Yeah.
It's, where would you say we are in terms of this current city council? Is it a 50-50 split, 60-40 split in terms of pro billboards, anti-billboards? Or is that too broad?
Well, yeah, I'm not,
Yeah. Does it get,
we'd like to know. Like I said, there are 4 councilmen
mhm,
who have come out strongly
on the record?
on the record
Mhm.
that they are opposing this.
And then the others are touting these individual,
The others are kind of
Approaches.
adopting,
yeah.
there are a couple councilmen who seem to be like, these, what's wrong with billboards? They help business, blah, blah, blah.
Mhm.
But the others, I would say there's probably 4 or 5 in there who are just they're kind of in a wait and see
Yeah.
kind of attitude, like which direction is the thing's going to go. It makes a lot of difference. The thing is, billboards are not, their impact is not is not equally. They don't have an equal impact around the city.
Yeah, that's true.
They're a lot more visible in some places than others.
Mhm.
Particularly when the digital billboards were up, they were all here, Hollywood, the West Side.
Yeah.
There were 8 or 9 council districts that had no digital billboards at all.
Well, it's about demographics. That's how marketing works.
Mitch Englander, who's kind of carrying the water for the
Mhm.
billboard lobby on the Plum Committee, he has by far the fewest number of billboards of any council district
Mhm.
out there, and he doesn't have constituents. Paul Koretz and Mike Bonin, they have constituents who,
Over.
pick up the phone and call and say, "What the hell is this sign? Why? That's illegal. What's that sign doing there? Don't allow those billboards. We hate
Well,
those."
and then that jives or segues right into what can mere mortals, average citizens in LA do about that? And I think you just said, let your council person know.
Yes, that's a
I mean,
that's a very important
take
point,
the
but
time.
if I can just touch on one other point
Mhm.
that is related to that, and that is that the issue of demographics,
Mhm.
as obviously the different council districts have quite different demographics, and the billboard companies want they target the more affluent areas.
Well, they spend a lot of money on market research.
And that's what they, because that's where they get more spenders.
Mhm.
So billboards, when you get in places like South LA, East LA, kind of the east part of the valley, African American communities, Latino communities predominantly, where they have problems with just some really basic issues that they're dealing with, like substandard housing,
Safety,
lack of
parks.
jobs,
Mhm.
safety, parks. Billboards are not a big issue. I mean, it's hard to talk to people in those communities and get them
Yeah.
aroused about billboards. However, we're trying to do it, and the way we're trying to do it is that around the issue of what do billboards advertise? And what does that do to communities? I was down, I drove about
That's a good point.
I drove about 20 blocks to a meeting on Crenshaw, south of the 10 freeway the other day. And I saw within that distance, about 20 blocks, I saw 4 billboards for advertising alcohol and 2 advertising gambling. And you don't see those out in West LA.
No.
You know,
That's a good point.
you don't see those on Ventura Boulevard. And you see the same thing in East LA. I've driven out to East LA and you see so many billboards for alcohol in Spanish. And these communities, this is impacts on community health. And in fact, a couple of researchers 3 years ago from USC, they did a study of, actually took 7 of these regional centers that were going to be eligible for sign districts, and they spent a year just recording the content on billboards in the surrounding areas of those. And they found, and they had, some of those were in affluent areas, some of those were, they found places like Van Nuys, for instance, that the prevalence of billboard advertising for alcohol, for fast food, for sugary drinks, for media content that showing depictions of violence, and people brandishing guns, but that were significantly more prevalent in those communities. So,
well, it makes sense. The same way they complain about in women's magazines that they're using these super skinny models have some relationship to, bulimia and other eating disorders. It sets up unreal expectations.
Yeah, those billboards are out there for a reason. They're to the idea is that you see that billboard, and if that has a McDonald's 5-pounder or
whatever it is, sounds good to me right now.
That will stimulate your appetite, and you see McDonald's, you pull in and get it. It's intended to do that, and of course, it's advertising. But what is the impact on that community? And that's the message we want to try to use to get more support from those communities, is to say that to the people, these billboards, if you legalize billboards that are illegal, if you, more digital billboards anywhere, it's just going to be more of that kind of thing.
It's so true. Well, I think we've seen it already in the way that television commercials have impacted culture and health.
Absolutely,
politics, everything. It's all
clear that advertising is.
It's not benign. It's not benign. It might seem that a billboard is just a billboard, but again, like you say, if you see enough of them, and they become part of the subliminal landscape of your mind, all this imagery, and it is food for thought.
And the billboard companies have no, they spend a lot.
They're in a business.
Their business.
They've got stockholders, and they need a return on their investment. And God bless America.
And the advertisers, they want their products where they want to sell.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to take the high ground and say, "Oh, I won't advertise on this medium or that medium." If you see your competitors' market share go up, because they are able. So it is. I am totally. I have no expectation. No, I probably have less than 0 expectation that billboard companies will take the high ground. No. If they do the right thing, it's because they're going to be forced to. Yes.
And that's our job.
Yeah. So overall, what's the weather report in terms of optimism versus pessimism?
I have to be optimistic because otherwise, there would be no reason to do it. If I look at it, really objectively, it's hard to be optimistic, but I think that I think that if I look back over the past 9 years that I've been involved in it, I think that I think that if we hadn't had this effort, and if people hadn't come forward and been interested in this issue and spoken out, I think things would be immeasurably worse.
I would agree with that.
So,
Yeah. Keep up the good work, Dennis. Are you going to be doing this for another 9 years?
no,
Yeah, me either. Thanks again.
you're welcome.